There are moments in history when one life becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the journey of one man, but the soul of a nation. This is the story of such a man. He was born in a small village of green rice fields and soft winds, far from the noise of kings or palaces. His name was Nguyen Ai Quoc, a boy who would one day walk farther than anyone could imagine, across oceans, through prisons, over mountains and deep into the hearts of millions. He had no army when he began, no wealth, no throne. Only a dream that his people might live free. Years later, the world would know him as Ho Chi Minh, the man whose simple smile carried the strength of 1,000 storms. He said once, "Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom." And those words were not just for Vietnam. They were for every soul that has ever longed to stand tall, to breathe freely, to belong to themselves. This film is not about war or politics or power. It's about a human being, his loneliness, his courage, his faith in ordinary people. It's about how a dream, born in a humble heart, can change the destiny of a nation. So sit back, listen slowly, and let the story unfold. And if stories like this move you, stories of courage, hope, and humanity, consider subscribing to join us on more journeys into the lives of those who changed the world, quietly but forever. Chapter 1. The Child of Kim Lien. The morning sun rose gently over the village of Kim Lien, brushing the tops of the bamboo leaves with threads of gold. The roosters had already called out the dawn, and from the small thatched houses came the quiet rhythm of daily life. The soft clatter of wooden sandals, the hum of women fetching water from the well, the laughter of children running barefoot along the red earth paths. Among those children was a boy named Nguyen Ai Quoc. He was small, quiet, and observant, the kind of child who listened more than he spoke. His eyes were dark and deep, filled with the quiet wonder of someone already trying to understand the world.
His father, Nguyen Ai Quoc, was a scholar, a man of learning and integrity, known for his strong sense of justice. His mother, Hoang Thi Loan, was gentle, devoted, and patient, weaving cloth late into the night so that her children might have a better life. Their house was modest, just bamboo, mud, and love. But inside, there was warmth, a place where kindness was taught, not through words, but through example. Kung often sat beside his father as he read old books aloud, stories of wise men, brave heroes, and the meaning of righteousness. When his father paused to sip tea, he would look at his son and say softly, "A man must learn to live with both wisdom and compassion. One without the other is an empty heart." The boy nodded quietly. He didn't yet understand it all, but the words sank deep, like seeds waiting for spring. Kung loved to wander. He followed the riverside where dragonflies danced and buffaloes grazed lazily under the sun. He liked to talk to the farmers, the fishermen, the old men smoking pipes by the tree. They told him stories of poverty, of hardship, and of their love for the land. Stories that carved invisible marks upon his young heart. Sometimes in the evenings, his mother would hum a folk song, her voice soft and sad,
like a lullaby carried by the wind. He would lie beside her, listening. That melody, simple and tender, stayed with him forever. The sound of home, the sound of the people. In the heart of this small village, a seed of empathy was growing. He saw how hard people worked, how unfair life could be, and how even the kindest souls often suffered. And though he was still just a child, a question began to form in his mind. Why must it be this way? One day, after helping his father with some chores, he asked, "Father, why are so many people poor?" His father looked at him for a long moment, then replied, "Because the world has not yet learned to share its heart." Those words, simple yet profound, lingered in his memory. They would later become part of the foundation of his belief that a nation's strength lies not in gold or guns, but in the unity of its people. As he grew, his curiosity deepened. At school, he studied hard, but he also questioned what he read. He wanted to understand not only history, but also justice, compassion, and freedom. His teachers noticed his determination, his sense of purpose that seemed far beyond his years. And when his family moved to Hue, where his father worked as a teacher, young Kung's eyes were opened to a larger world. A world divided between those who ruled and those who served. He saw palaces of wealth standing beside huts of hunger. He saw foreign soldiers marching proudly through the streets, while his own people bowed their heads. That sight burned quietly in his heart. He did not yet know how to change it, only that it needed to change. At night, as the lamps flickered in his small room, he would whisper to himself, "Someday, I will find the way." He did not know that this promise, made by a child of Kim Lien, would one day echo across mountains and oceans, calling a whole nation to rise. The story of Ho Chi Minh begins not with power, but with humility. Not in cities or palaces, but in a simple village where kindness was currency and hope was home. From those quiet rice fields of Kim Lien came a boy who learned to listen to his parents, to his people, and to the silence of his own heart. And it was from that silence that his lifelong dream was born, to bring freedom to his land and dignity to his people. Chapter 2. The Journey Begins. The year was 1911. The river flowed quietly under the morning mist, carrying the scent of salt and the whisper of farewells. At the Saigon harbor, ships stood still like great beasts of iron, their black hulls reflecting the pale sunlight. Among the workers and sailors, one young man stood apart. Nguyen Tat Tan, dressed in a simple brown tunic, a small bundle in hand, and eyes that carried the weight of both hope and sorrow. He looked back once, toward the land that had shaped him, toward the people he loved, toward the mountains and rice fields of Vietnam that were now fading behind the rising fog. There was a calm determination in his face, though his heart was heavy. He knew that this journey was not for himself alone. It was for millions who could not yet dream of freedom. The steam whistle blew. The ship's engines rumbled to life. As the Amiral Latouche Treville prepared to depart, the young man took a deep breath. This was it, the first step into the unknown. He whispered softly, "I will return when I have found the way for my people." No one heard those words but the wind and the river. Yet, they would echo across decades, guiding him through the storms of exile and revolution. Life aboard the ship was not easy. He worked as a kitchen assistant, scrubbing floors, carrying coal, serving officers. But in those long, exhausting days, he observed everything. The ship was his first classroom in understanding the world. In the galley, he met sailors from France, Africa, and other colonies. Men who, like him, came from lands ruled by others. Over small conversations and shared meals, he began to see a pattern. The same pain, the same injustice, repeated in different tongues. At night, when the world slept, he stood on deck watching the stars, feeling the sea wind on his face. The horizon stretched endlessly before him, wide, mysterious, full of promise. Beneath the vast sky, he felt small, but not insignificant. Even the smallest star, he thought, still shines in the darkness. The ship carried him to Marseille, then Paris, and further still, to Africa, America, and England. In each place he observed, listened, and learned. He saw the wealth of the West, but also its hypocrisy, how freedom was celebrated in words, yet denied to those under colonial rule. In London, he worked in kitchens and bakeries, often hungry, often cold. Yet, instead of bitterness, he carried curiosity. He read books on politics and philosophy. He followed the news of revolutions, the struggles for independence happening all over the world. Sometimes he would stand near the Thames River, watching the fog roll in, and think of the perfume river back home. He missed the warmth of his mother, the wisdom of his father, the songs of the fields. But above all, he missed the smile of freedom that his country had never known. To suffer for one's country, he once wrote, is not pain, it is honor. These years of wandering were not just a search for knowledge, but a test of spirit. Hunger, loneliness, and rejection became his teachers. Every hardship sharpened his resolve. Every encounter taught him empathy. For workers, for the poor, for all who lived under oppression. He began writing articles and essays under different names, speaking for those who could not speak. His words found their way into small newspapers, echoing with a simple but powerful idea: that all nations, big or small, deserve freedom. By the time he arrived in France, Nguyen Ai Quoc was no longer just a young man searching for answers. He was a thinker in the making, a dreamer turning into a revolutionary. He joined groups of workers and intellectuals, listening to debates, studying politics, and speaking about Vietnam. People noticed his calm voice and his quiet conviction. There was something magnetic in him, not loud, but firm, like a flame that refused to die. Years later, when asked why he had left home so young, he smiled gently and said, "I wanted to see what kind of world there was outside. And I wanted to know why our people could not live like others, free from that small boy of Kim Lien, to the young man standing on the deck of a ship, the transformation had begun. The journey was no longer about escaping a homeland. It was about finding a way to save it. The sea stretched endlessly before him, and somewhere beyond the horizon lay the answer he was destined to bring home.
Chapter 3. The Man Who Crossed Oceans. The sea had carried him far, farther than any boy from Kim Lien could have dreamed. Across oceans and continents, Nguyen Tat Tan became a man without a homeland, but with a purpose larger than himself. Wherever he went, he carried Vietnam in his heart, not as a place on a map, but as a memory, a promise, and a wound. He lived among strangers, learning their ways, their languages, their struggles. In each city, he was a worker, a student, a silent observer of history unfolding. The world became his teacher, and every hardship was a lesson in courage. In London, he rose before dawn to sweep the floors of the Carlton Hotel, his breath visible in the cold. The aroma of roasted coffee and warm bread filled the air, yet he ate little, saving every coin for books. At night, when the city glittered with lights, he sat alone in a small attic room, reading under a flickering lamp. He studied politics, history, and the revolutions that had changed the world. He learned from Abraham Lincoln, from the French Revolution, from the struggles of workers and farmers everywhere. But above all, he watched how men spoke of freedom, but lived with inequality. How empires preached civilization, yet thrived on the suffering of others. "They call themselves free," he once murmured, "but they build their freedom upon the chains of others." The words stayed with him like salt in the air, sharp, unforgettable. When his ship work took him to New York, he stood in awe before the Statue of Liberty. The great torch shone over the harbor, a symbol of freedom. Yet, in the crowded streets of Harlem and Chinatown, he saw poverty and hunger. The contrast struck him deeply. He wrote in his small notebook, "Liberty is not a gift. It must be earned and shared." In America, he learned about democracy and workers' unions. In France, he learned about revolution and equality. In Africa and Asia, he saw the shared pain of colonial peoples, their land taken, their dignity stolen, their voices silenced. The world was divided between the powerful and the powerless, and he began to understand that his journey was not just about Vietnam's freedom. It was about the freedom of all humankind. By the early 1920s, Nguyen Tat Tan had become Nguyen Ai Quoc, Nguyen the Patriot. The name carried both a message and a mission. Under that name, he began writing letters and articles, sending them to newspapers in Paris and beyond. His words were simple, but cut deep like truth itself. He exposed the injustices of colonial rule, the forced labor, the hunger, the silence of a people who had forgotten how to dream. In 1919, at the Versailles Peace Conference, he sent a petition titled "The Demands of the Annamite People." It called for basic human rights, equality, freedom, education, and justice. He signed it simply, Nguyen Ai Quoc,
The petition was ignored by the world leaders, but it was heard by history. The rejection did not break him, it forged him. He realized that freedom would not be given by those in power. It had to be claimed by those who believed in it. Paris became his new school of revolution. He met socialists, workers, and intellectuals who spoke of Marx, Lenin, and the future of oppressed nations. In their ideas, he found something both scientific and human, a belief that the poor and the powerless could stand up, united, and change their fate. Yet, even among fiery debates, Nguyen Ai Quoc remained calm. He did not seek revenge. He sought understanding. He once said, "I have only one desire: independence for my country, freedom for my people, and happiness for everyone." Those words would one day echo across jungles, cities, and generations. There were nights when he walked along the Seine River, the lights of Paris reflecting like stars on the water. The breeze reminded him of the perfume river back home. He imagined his mother's gentle voice, his father's wisdom, and the faces of children playing in the fields of Vietnam. He missed home deeply, but he knew he could not return. Not yet. The path to freedom was long, and the ocean between him and his homeland was not only of water, but of time and destiny. He looked at the dark waves and whispered, "Someday, I will cross these oceans again. Not as a traveler, but as a man who brings hope home." And so, the young man who had left Vietnam with nothing but courage now carried something far greater. A vision of freedom shaped by the world itself. He had crossed oceans not just in distance, but in understanding. From pain to purpose, from dream to destiny. The man who once scrubbed floors in silence was becoming a voice for the voiceless, the voice of a nation still waiting to awaken. Chapter 4. In the Heart of the West. Paris, the city of lights, ideas, and revolutions. But for Nguyen Ai Quoc, it was also the city of long nights, quiet hunger, and relentless purpose. He had walked through narrow alleys where poor workers shared bread and hope in equal measure. He had sat in crowded cafes where poets and dreamers spoke of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But when they turned to speak of colonies, their voices grew soft, their eyes uncertain, as if freedom had borders. It was there, in the very heart of the West, that Nguyen Ai Quoc began to understand something profound, that the struggle for Vietnam was part of something much larger, the struggle of all people chained by injustice. He became a member of the French Socialist Party, not as a man seeking power, but as a voice for those who had none. He spoke of his homeland, a faraway country many French had never heard of, and of millions living under colonial rule. His words were calm, yet they carried a weight that silenced rooms. "We are told to love freedom," he said. "But how can we love it if we are not allowed to taste it?" Soon, he realized that speeches alone would not change the world. He began to write, Articles, essays, letters, each line a spark of truth. Under the pen name Nguyen Ai Quoc, he exposed the lies of empire. His essays in Le Pariah, The Outcast, became whispers that stirred conscience across continents. He wrote not with hatred, but with clarity. His words were not weapons, they were mirrors. In 1920, at the Tours Congress, Nguyen Ai Quoc listened as the socialist movement split in two, between those who wanted reform and those who sought revolution. When the debate ended, he quietly walked to the table and signed his name to join the newly formed French Communist Party, becoming one of its founding members. He was not drawn by ideology alone, but by a vision that spoke to his soul. The idea that every nation, big or small, had the right to decide its own fate. To him, communism was not a distant theory, it was a promise. That peasants could own their land, that workers could share their labor, that no empire could rule forever. Only when the oppressed stand together, he said, will the world truly be free. But even in the heart of the West, Nguyen Ai Quoc remained an exile. He lived in a small room, writing late into the night by candlelight, his fingers stained with ink and dreams. Sometimes, when he grew tired, he would look at the sky above Paris, the same stars that shone over Kim Lien, and whisper softly to himself, "Patience." It was then that his path led him east again, to the land of a new revolution, the Soviet Union. In Moscow, he found a world unlike any he had known. Red flags fluttered above frozen streets, and men and women spoke with conviction of a new order. For Nguyen Ai Quoc, it was not the grandeur of revolution that impressed him, but its discipline, its belief in education, and its insistence on equality. He studied at the Communist University of the Toilers of the East, learning strategy, theory, and organization. But more than that, he observed how ideas could inspire, but also how they must adapt to the real lives of people. He learned that revolution was not about destruction, but renewal. Revolution, he said, is not a storm that sweeps away the past. It is the dawn that brings light to those who have lived too long in darkness. As he traveled across Europe, Russia, and Asia, Nguyen Ai Quoc became something rare, a man of both intellect and humility. He could speak to professors and peasants alike, with the same warmth, the same belief that every person had value. He dressed simply, ate little, and gave most of what he earned to others. His comrades noticed how he listened more than he spoke, how his eyes carried both sadness and fire. In every discussion, he returned to one simple truth. The revolution must belong to the people, not to those who cling to lead them. He dreamed of a movement born from the soil of Vietnam itself, not imported from foreign lands. When he left Moscow, he carried no riches, no medals, only a notebook filled with plans, ideas, and hopes. In its last pages, he had written a single line: "The path home is long, but my people are waiting." And somewhere deep in his heart, the grocer's son from Kim Lien, who had crossed oceans and learned from the world, was ready to return, not as a wanderer, but as a teacher. The West had shaped his mind, but it was the East that still called to his soul. Chapter 5. Becoming Ho Chi Minh. The road home began not in Vietnam, but in the dusty streets of southern China. There, among the whispers of traders, refugees, and dreamers, Nguyen Ai Quoc became a teacher once again. This time to those who would one day write the next chapter of their nation's story. He spoke softly, always with patience. His students were young Vietnamese men and women who had fled colonial rule, searching for direction. They found in him not a general or a politician, but a guide, a man who had seen the world and returned with clarity. He taught them about the revolutions of others, about courage and discipline, about love for the people above all things. But most of all, he taught them to believe in themselves, in each other, in the quiet strength of unity. "The people are like water," he said once. "The revolutionaries are like fish. The fish cannot live without water." It was a lesson about humility, that true leadership was not about commanding others, but living among them. In the bustling city of Guangzhou, he began to form the foundation of what would become the Vietnam Revolutionary Youth League, a small group with a great dream. Each night, they gathered in secret rooms lit by oil lamps, their faces half lit by hope and half shadowed by fear. He spoke to them of his journey across continents, of how he had seen freedom in words, but not in deeds, equality promised, but not delivered. He told them that Vietnam's struggle must be its own, rooted in its soil, spoken in its language, carried by its people. He wrote pamphlets, leaflets, and letters, using simple words that even the poor could understand. His writings spread like seeds in the wind, crossing borders and reaching villages where whispers began to rise. The old world is ending. A new one is coming. But life in exile was never safe. Colonial spies hunted his network. Friends were arrested. Meetings dissolved overnight. Yet he never showed fear. When others despaired, he smiled. A quiet, reassuring smile that seemed to say, "We are closer than you think." He lived simply, often moving from one place to another, from Guangzhou to Hong Kong, from Siam, Thailand, to the Soviet Union again. Everywhere he went, he gathered stories of peasants who dreamed, of workers who endured, of soldiers who waited for a reason to fight. To them, he was no longer just Nguyen Ai Quoc. He had become something larger, a symbol, a father, a name that carried both humility and hope. It was around this time that a new name began to appear, Ho Chi Minh, meaning he who enlightens. He did not choose it for glory. He chose it to remind himself of purpose, that his life was not his own, but a lamp to guide others through darkness. To light the path of others, he once said, one must be willing to burn. In 1930, in a small room in Hong Kong, he helped establish the Communist Party of Vietnam. It was not a grand ceremony, no banners, no speeches, no fanfare. Just a few men, a flickering lamp, and the steady voice of a leader who had carried his dream across the world. That night, history changed direction. For the first time, the Vietnamese people had a movement bound not by fear, but by faith in their own strength. The years that followed were filled with danger. Ho Chi Minh was imprisoned, exiled, hunted. Yet even behind bars, he remained free in spirit. He wrote poetry on scraps of paper, his words soft as moonlight, bright and strong as steel. Without the cold and desolation of winter, he wrote, there could not be the warmth and splendor of spring. Those lines revealed his secret, that strength was born not from anger, but from endurance, not from hatred, but from hope. By the early 1940s, his hair had begun to gray, but his spirit only grew brighter. He returned once more to the mountains of northern Vietnam, where rivers and jungles hid his new home, the cradle of revolution. There, in a small cave surrounded by bamboo and mist, Ho Chi Minh began to gather his people. Farmers, workers, students, soldiers, all united by a single dream. He spoke to them by firelight, his voice calm and gentle. Remember, he said, we are not fighting for revenge. We fight so that our children may never have to. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying his words into the night. In that silence, the grocer's son from Kim Lien, the wanderer who had once scrubbed floors in London, who had stood before the Statue of Liberty and dreamed of freedom, had finally come home. He was no longer the boy who left Vietnam. He was Ho Chi Minh, the man who would awaken a nation. Chapter 6. Return to the Homeland. The year was 1941. After more than 30 years of exile, of wandering through ports, prisons, and revolutions, Ho Chi Minh finally set foot once again on the soil of his homeland. The mountains of northern Vietnam were cloaked in mist, their peaks rising like memories from a dream. The forests whispered softly, as if welcoming home the sun who had been gone too long. He stood on a narrow trail, breathing in the scent of bamboo and rain, and whispered to himself, I am home. But this home was not the same. His country was still under foreign rule, its people weary from decades of hunger and silence. Villages were burned, fields abandoned, families torn apart by war. Yet in the eyes of farmers and children, he saw something that had never died, the faint glow of hope. He found shelter in a small cave in the Pac Bo Mountains, where a clear stream flowed nearby. There, among the moss and stone, he built a simple life. He called the stream Lenin Creek, and the nearby mountain, Karl Marx Peak, a quiet reminder of the ideas that had guided his long journey. Every morning, he fetched water from the stream, cooked cornmeal, and wrote by the light of a small oil lamp. In the afternoons, he met with comrades, young men and women who had followed his dream through the jungle. They were farmers, teachers, workers, ordinary people who had decided that enough was enough. Under the trees they read newspapers, copied leaflets by hand, and trained to fight not out of hate, but out of love for the lands that raised them. Our people are poor, he told them, but our hearts are rich with courage. At night, the mountains echoed with the soft scratch of his pen. He wrote articles, lessons, and poems, words that would travel like rivers through the villages, awakening minds long kept in darkness. In those quiet nights of exile within his own country, Ho Chi Minh reflected on his years abroad. He remembered the cold of Paris, the noise of London, the hunger of New York, the frozen streets of Moscow, and how every moment had led him here, to this silence filled with purpose. He had walked through the world to learn how nations rose and fell, how empires ruled and crumbled. And now, he would use all that he had learned, not to destroy, but to rebuild. To truly love your country, he once said, is to teach its people to stand on their own feet. And that became his mission.
In May 1941, he founded the Viet Minh, the League for the Independence of Vietnam. Its goal was clear: to unite all classes, all regions, all hearts under one banner: independence and freedom. He told his comrades that a nation's greatest weapon was not its guns, but its unity. Victory, he said, belongs to those who believe it is possible. From the caves of Pac Bo, messages began to flow. Short, powerful leaflets written in simple language, urging peasants to believe in themselves, to fight for their right to live free. The revolution had begun not with explosions, but with whispers. With each word spread, each letter copied, each meeting held in secret, the dream of a free Vietnam began to take shape, invisible but unstoppable, like the wind through the bamboo.
Life in Pac Bo was harsh. The nights were cold, and the forest teemed with danger. Sometimes there was no food for days, yet those who lived beside him never saw him complain. He ate the same rice, wore the same clothes, and slept on the same straw mat as everyone else. He was not president or comrade leader. He was simply Uncle Ho, the man who listened, who smiled, who carried their pain as his own. He once said gently to a young soldier, "Remember, it is easy to love your country when it is beautiful. The true love is when it suffers, and you still stay." By 1945, the world had changed. The war that had shaken the globe was nearing its end. In the chaos that followed Japan's surrender, Ho Chi Minh saw the chance that history had denied for nearly a century. From his cave in the mountains, he looked out over the green valleys and knew the time had come. Decades of exile, struggle, and patience had led to this moment. The nation was stirring. He put down his pen, folded his papers, and said quietly to his comrades, "We shall go down the mountain and meet our destiny." And with that, the man who had once crossed oceans, who had learned from every corner of the world, began the final and most important journey of all, the journey to awaken his people. Chapter 7: The Flame of Revolution. September 2nd, 1945. The sun rose gently over Ba Dinh Square in Hanoi, painting the air with the gold of early morning. Thousands gathered, men, women, children, their eyes filled with disbelief, joy, and a cautious kind of hope. For the first time in a lifetime, there were no foreign flags above them, only the red banner with a single yellow star, the heart of Vietnam. From the small wooden platform, Ho Chi Minh looked out over the sea of faces. He was thin, almost fragile, yet there was an undeniable stillness in him, the kind of calm that comes from walking through storms and surviving. He had waited his whole life for this moment. 30 years of exile, prison, hunger, disguise, and loss, all had led here, to this single day. He began to speak. His voice was steady, though soft, not commanding, but intimate, as if speaking to each person directly. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The words came from far away, from another revolution, another continent, but now they were reborn under the Vietnamese sky, belonging not to a distant empire, but to a small, proud nation that had suffered too long. That is what the American Declaration of Independence says, he continued. In a broader sense, these words mean that all peoples on the earth are equal. Every people has the right to live, to be happy, and to be free. The crowd was silent, listening not only with their ears, but with their souls. For the first time, their pain had been given voice. For the first time, someone had said, not whispered, not dreamed, but declared aloud that they deserved freedom. As he read the Declaration of Independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, the words carried both fire and tenderness. He spoke not as a ruler, but as a son, returning his mother's long-lost name. Vietnam has the right to be a free and independent country, and in fact, it has become so. The entire Vietnamese people are determined to bring their entire strength, their lives, and their property to maintain this independence and liberty. In that moment, the wind seemed to pause. Even the birds circling above the square were silent. And then, a wave of sound, tears, shouts, laughter, and songs. The people of Vietnam, after nearly a century under foreign rule, were finally breathing as one nation. Ho Chi Minh stepped back from the microphone, his hands clasped behind his back. He smiled faintly, not with triumph, but with tenderness. He had not declared victory for himself, but for them, for the farmers in the rice fields, the laborers in the cities, the mothers who had lost sons, the children who had grown up knowing only war. Someone handed him a glass of water. He sipped it quietly, looking toward the horizon. He knew this was not the end, not even the beginning of peace. The struggle ahead would be long, perhaps longer than his own life. But in that moment, for one breath of history, his people were free. He turned to a nearby aide and said softly, almost to himself, "We have won the right to be independent. Now we must prove we deserve it." That night, Hanoi glowed with lanterns and laughter. People sang in the streets, holding hands, their faces lit by candlelight. In the small house where he stayed, Ho Chi Minh sat by a window, writing in his notebook by the light of a kerosene lamp. Outside, he could hear the sounds of celebration, a symphony of freedom that had waited generations to be heard. He paused, his pen above the paper. The weight of history pressed gently on his shoulders. Then he smiled, whispering a few words. Words that captured both his humility and his hope. Independence and freedom are precious. If we must sacrifice our lives to defend them, we are ready. For many, that day at Ba Dinh Square was the beginning of a new dawn. For Ho Chi Minh, it was the moment when a dream became a promise that would cost decades of struggle, yet would never fade. He looked at the red flag outside, waving softly against the night sky. A star in the center, a nation reborn. And somewhere, deep within, he whispered, not to the crowd, not to history, but to the land itself. I have returned you your name. Chapter 8. The War and the Will. The hills and jungles of northern Vietnam had become both sanctuary and battleground. Ho Chi Minh walked slowly along the narrow trails, observing his people. Farmers carrying supplies, young recruits practicing drills, elders tending to gardens that would feed the army and the villagers alike. Every face told a story of hunger, of fear, of hope. He carried the weight of those stories in his heart. Every decision he made could bring life or death, victory or despair. Yet he never allowed the burden to crush his spirit. The leader, he often reminded himself, is not above the people. He carries their pain as his own. The First Indochina War had begun. The French, unwilling to relinquish control, returned with guns, troops, and strategy. Villages were raided, forests bombed, and rivers patrolled. Yet, Ho Chi Minh's resolve never wavered. He would sit by the firelight at night, surrounded by maps and reports, and imagine the people behind the numbers. Children in flooded rice fields, mothers cooking over smoky fires, elders waiting for news of their sons. He knew that leadership was not about grand speeches or parades. It was about knowing each sacrifice, understanding each sorrow, and guiding every effort toward a vision that sometimes seemed impossibly distant. It is easy to command armies, he said softly. But the true strength is in serving the hearts of the people. Each day brought new challenges. Supplies were scarce, medicine ran low, morale was fragile. Ho Chi Minh often disguised himself in simple clothes, walking among the villages, listening, comforting, teaching. He asked questions not to interrogate, but to understand. What do you need most? He would ask. How can we make your work lighter, your burdens smaller? Even in the midst of war, he never forgot that humanity was more than strategy. The soldiers respected him, not for his authority, but for his quiet attention to their lives, for the way he remembered each name, each family, each fear. Letters and messages crossed mountains and rivers. Some bore news of victories, others of loss. Ho Chi Minh read each one, tears forming quietly, then wiped them away before anyone could see. He could not show weakness, not to his people, not to his comrades, not to history. Yet, in his solitude, he would whisper prayers to the land itself. Guide us through the storm. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Let justice rise like the sun. He understood that freedom would demand sacrifices that weighed heavily on the soul, and that a leader's courage was tested not only on the battlefield, but in quiet moments of reflection. Despite the hardships, he never lost sight of the vision that had carried him across oceans decades ago. Independence was more than a flag. It was the dignity of a people who had lived too long in silence. It was the right to educate their children, to farm their land, to sing their songs without fear. Victory without the people's hearts, he wrote once, is no victory at all. This belief guided every campaign, every negotiation, every strategic choice. It was why he avoided unnecessary bloodshed when possible, why he insisted on sharing victories and losses alike with his soldiers and citizens, and why he always returned to the villages to remember why the fight mattered. Evenings in the jungle were filled with whispers of planning and the quiet rustle of leaves. Ho Chi Minh would sit by candlelight, writing letters to international allies, encouraging comrades, and drafting speeches that would one day be read aloud to inspire an entire nation. In these moments, he allowed himself a rare reflection. He thought of the boy from Kim Lien, who had left home with nothing but curiosity and courage, of the young man who had crossed oceans, and of the teacher who had spoken gently to those exiled in foreign lands. All the lessons of life, he would say, prepare a man for this one task, to serve the people when they need him most. The war pressed on, relentless and unforgiving. Yet in the hearts of the Vietnamese, hope began to grow, not as a fragile ember, but as a steady flame, nurtured by the presence of the man they called Uncle Ho. He carried the weight of leadership with quiet grace, knowing that every choice mattered, every life counted, and every day brought them closer to the freedom they had waited so long to touch. In the jungle, by candlelight, beneath the stars, Ho Chi Minh whispered once more to himself, "Our people will see the dawn. And when it comes, it will shine for all of us." The weight of leadership was heavy, yes, but so was the love that carried it. Chapter 9. The Father of the Nation. The years passed quietly, yet the work of a nation's rebirth never paused. Ho Chi Minh, once the boy from Kim Lien and the wanderer across continents, had become the steadfast heart of Vietnam. His hair had turned silver, his face etched with lines of worry and endurance, but his eyes still held the quiet fire of purpose. He walked slowly through the streets of Hanoi, greeting citizens, shaking hands with farmers, children tugging gently at his sleeve. He listened to their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. He asked questions not to assert power, but to understand the heartbeat of his people. The soul of a nation, he would say softly, is in the lives of its people. As President of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, he faced endless challenges. The country was scarred by years of war, poverty, and foreign domination. Villages needed rebuilding, schools reopened, and roads repaired. Yet, amidst this monumental task, Ho Chi Minh never allowed despair to take hold. He reminded everyone, including himself, that progress came one step at a time. Small acts, planting rice, teaching children to read, sharing a meal, were as important as victories on the battlefield. What matters, he said, is that our people walk freely, with dignity in their hearts. Even as he aged, his discipline remained unmatched. He rose early each morning, walked for hours, met with ministers, educators, and community leaders. He studied reports on agriculture, education, and industry, seeking ways to lift his people from hardship. Yet, despite the demands of leadership, he remained humble. Ho Chi Minh wore simple clothes, ate simple meals, and slept on a modest cot. He lived among the people, not above them. His philosophy was clear. A nation belongs to its people, and its leader serves, not commands. He often reminded his comrades, true leadership is not in giving orders, but in showing the way with your own example. In quiet moments, Ho Chi Minh reflected on the long journey that had brought him here. He remembered the rivers of France, the streets of London, the frozen cities of Russia, and the mountains of China. Each experience had shaped him, teaching lessons of patience, resilience, and the power of hope. He thought of the young men and women who had fought beside him, the children who would inherit a free nation, and the ordinary citizens who had endured so much. He understood that freedom was fragile, and peace must be nurtured every day. It is not enough to be independent, he whispered. One must also be just, compassionate, and wise. People began to call him Uncle Ho, not as a title of power, but as a name of affection. He became more than a president. He was a symbol, a moral compass, a father figure for a nation that had known so little stability. Children would gather around him, their eyes wide with curiosity. Asking questions, he answered with patience and warmth. He often said, "Love for the people is the greatest strength of a leader. Without it, nothing else matters." In his final years, he continued to guide the nation with gentle determination. He oversaw programs for education, healthcare, and infrastructure, always emphasizing simplicity, fairness, and unity. He encouraged the young to think critically, the workers to organize peacefully, and the farmers to care for the land that sustained them. Even as his body weakened, his spirit remained unshakable. He carried the weight of history lightly, yet with unwavering devotion. His life was a testament to patience, courage, and the quiet power of love for one's people. When he passed away in 1969, the nation mourned, but the legacy he left was eternal. Ho Chi Minh had transformed Vietnam from a land oppressed by foreign powers into a country that dared to dream, hope, and stand for itself. He was more than a leader. He was the father of the nation, a living reminder that courage, humility, and compassion could shape history. And in every village, every school, and every river valley, The people carried his words, his lessons, and his quiet, unwavering example. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom, he had said. Our people must cherish them and protect them always. The boy from Kim Lien had become a man who had awakened a nation, leaving a legacy that would shine for generations to come. Chapter 10: The Final Years and the Immortal Legacy. The later years of Ho Chi Minh's life were quieter, yet no less purposeful. Though age had slowed his steps and silvered his hair, his mind remained sharp, his heart full of unwavering devotion to his people. He moved through Hanoi's streets with calm authority, observing, listening, and quietly shaping the path of a nation. Even in modest homes, amidst farmers, workers, and children, he remained the same man who had once crossed oceans and studied the world. Patient, attentive, and ever humble. He taught that leadership was not about titles or grandeur, but about service. It is easy to command from a throne, he would say. It is far harder to serve the people with your heart. His days were spent reading, writing, and meeting with young leaders. He encouraged them to think independently, to respect the people, and to remember that every decision carried consequences for those they served. He emphasized that progress was not only measured in victories, but in the everyday lives of citizens. Children educated, crops harvested, villages healed. In his modest quarters, he often reflected on the long journey from the small village of Kim Lien to the hills of northern Vietnam. He recalled the nights in Paris and Moscow, the clandestine meetings in China, the rivers and mountains he had crossed to carry his dream. Each memory was a lesson in patience, humility, and perseverance. A leader's strength, he said quietly to himself, comes from walking beside the people, not ahead of them. As Vietnam continued its struggle for unity and independence, Ho Chi Minh remained both symbol and guide. He understood that freedom, once achieved, required constant care. Independence was not simply a declaration, it was a responsibility, one that demanded vigilance, compassion, and wisdom. He took time to speak to children, farmers, and workers alike, instilling in them the values he had carried all his life: honesty, courage, and the importance of education. He believed that a nation's future belonged not to its leaders alone, but to every citizen who dared to dream. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom, he often reminded them. And these must be protected with care and dedication. In 1969, Ho Chi Minh passed away, leaving behind a country forever transformed. Yet even in death, his presence lingered in the schools, the fields, the streets, and the hearts of the people. His legacy was not written only in political history, but in the courage he inspired, the hope he nurtured, and the quiet strength he embodied. He had become more than a man. He was a guiding light, a father of a nation, and a symbol of endurance and moral integrity. His teachings continued to resonate. The importance of service, the value of humility, and the necessity of unwavering belief in justice and freedom. Being a leader means standing for what is right, even if you stand alone, he had said. Words that would echo through generations. From the boy of Kim Lien to the wanderer across continents, to Ho Chi Minh, the father of Vietnam. His life showed that courage, wisdom, and compassion could shape history. His flame, a quiet, steadfast fire, would never die. The story of Ho Chi Minh is more than history. It is a journey of courage, patience, and unwavering love for one's people. From the quiet village of Kim Lien to the hills, rivers, and cities of a nation reborn, his life reminds us that even the smallest voice, when guided by conviction and compassion, can change the course of history. He taught that true leadership is not measured by power or titles, but by service, humility, and the courage to stand for what is right, even when standing alone. His flame, once kindled in the hearts of a few, grew to illuminate an entire nation and continues to inspire generations across the world. As we reflect on his journey, we see that freedom, justice, and hope are treasures worth protecting, not just for a nation, but for humanity itself. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tales of courage and history. Click the like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this story with someone who loves learning about the lives that shaped the world. Let's keep the flame of knowledge and inspiration alive together.